Let's take a look at SMU, shall we? This is a very interesting matchup for Baylor this week. You could argue, at least going into this season, that week 2 was a tougher matchup than week 1 because SMU is a team that made the college football playoff last year. You want to talk about the talent that probably does go towards Auburn and the talent that they bring back. But SMU sitting there at number 16 in the rankings. They took care of business against East Texas A&M. You might know it as A&M Commerce on Saturday. And they're sitting there at 1-0. So let's take a little look at SMU. We'll also have some of our patented Locked on Baylor trivia back at the end of this segment. SMU 1-0, Baylor 0-1. Certainly a difference in their quality of schedule through 1 week of the season. The Bears travel up to University Park, just outside of Dallas, but not in Dallas, right? On Saturday morning, 11 a.m., or you can catch it on the CW if you can't make it out to the game. 42-13 was the final score in that one. Dave talked about Kevin Jennings and the similarities between he and Jackson Arnold. Definitely another guy that can get outside of the pocket. But the worry for SMU, because Jennings had a good game. Jennings was fine. He threw for 2 touchdowns, ran for another one, threw for 260. But the concern for SMU certainly has to be the injury bug. They didn't run the football that effectively. Their leading rusher only had 44 yards in the game, and 2 of their starters went down in the first quarter of the season. 1 on each side of the ball. Alex Kilgore, linebacker who started all 14 games for them last year, had 5 tackles in the college football playoff. That's a big-time player to lose. And Jordan Hudson. No, not that Jordan Hudson. Those of you watched TCU North Carolina last night probably heard a lot about one Jordan Hudson, not this one. Spells it like the regular Jordan. He's a kid who's been a stud for SMU the last couple of years at receiver. TCU transfer, rode the iron skillet road there. Top returning receiver they have, 39 catches for 422 and 5 touchdowns, which led the Mustangs last year in an 11-win season. So we talked about it with Grayson Singleton a few weeks ago, and we'll have a crossover later this week. But he had talked about it's not a great quantity of guys that are returning from a college football playoff team last year, but there is good quality of guys coming back from last year. And really, you would look at the quarterback-receiver combo of Jennings and Hudson to be a big part of that. Came down hard on a tackle, elbow injury. And if you watch the game like I did, he was in the tent for like 30 seconds and then went right back to the locker room, wasn't seen again. Part of that, sure, you don't want to, if there's anything that's, you want to be cautious is what I'm trying to say in a weird way. Like if there's anything that's going to go wrong, you don't want it to go wrong against East Texas A&M when you can save him for a bigger game. Rhett Lashley on Monday said the x-rays were negative, but he's unsure about the timetable. They put out their depth chart for this week. He is still listed as the starter, but it sounds like it really could be a game time kind of thing. And he does have a freshman as the backup. But I would say the initial outlook on SMU, which we'll talk more about tomorrow and Thursday, the initial outlook is Kevin Jennings is a lot like Jackson Arnold in that he can make plays with his feet almost as well as he can make plays with his arm. And certainly in the case of Arnold, he's better with his feet than he is with his arm. And so you can't just skate by playing the same defense you played last week. You can't just play too high the whole game. And with the way that Jennings can throw on the run, I don't know if a spy is really the answer either. You've got to be better at stopping the run. Good news is SMU played an FCS team and did not run the ball all that effectively on Saturday. In fact, a lot of the reports after the game were that they were pretty sloppy. And again, their leading rusher had 44 yards. And Jennings only rushed, I think, for 12 yards in this game. So it's not like they beat him on the ground. And I know, 42-13 is 42-13. It's not to take away from that, but you would have expected against an FCS opponent, you would have ran all over him the way that Auburn did to a Big 12 opponent. Anyway, SMU comes in as a team with a lot of confidence. Do they have all the guys in there from last year? No, they don't. But They did make the college football playoff last year. They really feel like they are a team that could be reckoned with in the ACC, which had a heck of a weekend, by the way. I'll have to talk about that with Grayson. Not exactly the best time to come at him with a Big 12 ACC debate after what we saw this past weekend. But, a lot of miscommunication. You're certainly seeing a lot of kinks to be worked out for this SMU team, which has a lot of new blood on it. Didn't run the football all that effectively. 8 penalties for 84 yards against an East Texas A&M team. There's a lot to kind of digest from this, both good and bad. And you're talking about 2 quarterbacks who look like Heisman dark horses. But Jennings himself was up and down. The down wasn't bad. I think he was 22 for 30. So it wasn't bad. A couple of drops in there, had a pick, threw a couple. He could have had another pick or two, much like Sawyer Robertson could have had. But this is going to be a fascinating game. I don't think it's going to be a cauldron of a home field advantage for SMU. These are teams whose players are going to be very familiar with each other, but their teams aren't very familiar with each other. SMU does enough of what Auburn does well that it could worry you. But like I said about Auburn, I'll say the same about SMU. I don't think they've seen an offense as good as Baylor's. I really don't. And maybe they will in the ACC this year with Cade Klubnik and Carson Beck. For sure they'll face some good quarterbacks. But in terms of the way that Baylor attacks you and how potent that offense is, I don't think they've seen an offense like Baylor's. But again, we'll hear from Dave Aranda about that tomorrow, about Kevin Jennings specifically, and we'll have Grayson Singleton later in the week to cross it over. But before we get you out of here, we do have trivia, the return of Locked On Baylor trivia. Okay, and this is SMU themed. And so you guys know I'm probably going a little bit in the Wayback Machine here, but this was a really fascinating one, okay? Eric Dickerson, you might have heard of him, played in something called the Pony Express at SMU and is one of the all-time Southwest Conference rush leaders. In fact, when he left school, he was the all-time leader in rushing yards in the Southwest Conference, Earl Campbell, number 2, and his teammate, Eric Dickerson's teammate, Greg James, number 3. Here's the question. Eric Dickerson led the Southwest Conference in rushing yards in 1981, but he did not make the All-American team. There were 2 running backs that beat him out. What I want to know is who were the 2 Heisman Trophy winning running backs and all-time college football greats that beat out Eric Dickerson on the 1981 All-American team. They are 2 guys you have heard of. Absolutely. They are 2 guys who contributed to a lot of success in the NFL, one in a pretty roundabout way. And like I said, they both were Heisman Trophy winners. So let me know who those 2 guys are in the comment section below. And let me know what you think about this SMU team and what your takeaways were from their game on Saturday and how Baylor matches up with them. Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel to get you ready for this game and every game all season long. We're coming off one of our best months in Locked On Baylor history, and I need you great Baylor fans to keep that momentum going. So like the video, subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a lot. And thank you guys for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you tomorrow, Wicker Wednesday, on another episode of your favorite show, Locked On. Get those trivia answers in the comment section and tweet at me at Locked On Baylor. Locked On Baylor.